We are less than 1 week away to the 2025 NHL Draft. Today, like we've been doing every weekend, we're going to recap all the latest trade talk around the draft and all the picks that we could see moved, as well as players. There could be a lot of activity at this event, including some possibilities of the top 5 draft picks being moved. We'll discuss some of the other top players that could be moved for first-round picks and a whole lot more. It's going to be a very busy event. Lots to discuss coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're recapping all the latest trade talks and all the rumors surrounding the 2025 NHL Draft. It's been something we've been doing every weekend to kind of recap all the latest talk about what we might see at this event. This probably might be the last one we do. At least it'll be the last weekly kind of recap of what we've been hearing around the draft. If there's anything more substantial that comes up, there might be maybe one more later in the week before the draft itself. Of course, we're less than a week away. Today's Saturday. The draft starts next Friday evening. So here's what we've been hearing, and here's all the speculation that's out and about around the NHL. NHL insider Frank Saravalli believes that there could be multiple top 5 picks traded in this year's draft. Now, of course, it's not something that's a real common thing. The top 5 draft picks are hard to come by, and they usually, if they're going to be moved, have really, really high price tags. But there's a belief out there within the teams picking in the top 5 that they all kind of have some different ideas of players they're targeting, and maybe we could see some shuffling around, making sure that they all kind of get who they want here in this draft. I really don't think there's any chance that we see the New York Islanders move off of number 1. I mean, the odds of that are probably pretty slim unless they somehow get, the 2 or 3 pick and a bunch of other stuff that's just too hard to pass up. But it's pretty unlikely that one of the other teams near the top is going to come and offer that. You don't get to pick first overall very often. You have a really good franchise altering. I don't think we can call him generational. That term gets used a little too loosely. But Matthew Schaefer looks like he could be a franchise altering number 1 D-man. So I honestly think that they're going to select him. But, when you get to 2, 3, 4, and 5, there's a variance of opinions out there on who all of these teams liked. Leading up until last week, it was believed that Michael Misa from the OHL was pretty much a slam dunk to go to the Sharks at number 2. Now, not so sure. There's some draft experts out there that think there are teams, and possibly the Sharks and the Blackhawks at 3 are one of them as well, that might actually like Caleb Desnoyers or Anton Frondel even a little bit more than Misa. So they're kind of viewed upon as possibly being just a little bit more complete players. There's some people that think that Frondel might turn out to be close to a Barkov type. Now, it doesn't mean he's going to be Barkov. That's some pretty big shoes to fill. Not saying he's going to be him, but that type of player that could be a top 6 centerman who has the skill to maybe be a 1C, but also has the complete game to be potentially in Selke conversations or to shut other teams' best players down. It could be like a franchise altering player. Now there's others that think that maybe he's just a really good player. There's a difference between being really good and being franchise altering. So, there's, like I said, a difference of opinion out there on that right now. So it's difficult to say for sure if any of these 5 teams actually trade their picks. I don't think that they're going to trade them outright unless there's a wicked deal that they can't pass up. I don't see Chicago or San Jose or the Islanders in the top 3 trading their picks outright. There's been some speculation though that the Blackhawks pick is available for the right deal, but I'm not really sure that it would be for an outright player. I'm not sure what player that's out there in the NHL. Based on the players we've heard all the rumors about that could be traded, I don't know if there's anybody that's worth that kind of a high pick. But could Chicago, like I said, now they're a team that has been rumored to like some players like Frondel, Desnoyers, a little more than Misa. So if it goes Schaefer, Misa at the top, and if they're confident they can move back a couple of spots and still get the player they really like and also get some extra assets, I could see the Blackhawks doing that. So with the 3 pick being available, I think that's mainly the type of trade you could possibly see. Now, Utah at the number 4 spot is a team that could be very interesting to watch. A lot of NHL insiders are saying that they expect them to want to make a big splash. Obviously, if the big splash trade is not there, they will take a really good player with this selection as well and add them to their young group that they're building upon. But it is believed that Utah wants to win as soon as possible, so they're open to trading the pick if they lands them a really high-end player who can come in and help them immediately. So we'll see. Now, Nashville at 5 is a little bit of a wild card. They're in a different situation. If they could get a player that's 22, 23 and is like very high-end, then maybe they do it. But again, there's not a lot of players like that available. So that's why I think if we do see movement in those top 5 picks, it's really just going to be a jockeying of positions, maybe making sure they get the player they want, maybe while getting some extra assets. So we'll see. But the Islanders at the top, like I said, I don't expect them to move off of 1, but they are going to be a team to watch. They've been getting a lot of discussion points through NHL insiders saying that they've been very active in trade talks. New GM Matthew Darche is not wasting any time trying to make this team better, not only in the immediate future, but also for the long haul. I think the Islanders, it's hard to say what they do here. I wouldn't be completely shocked if they took a small step back. We know they missed the playoffs this year, and they were borderline mediocre. They were in the conversation for those wildcard spots until, not right to the end, but later into the season. Some of the players that they might move, I wouldn't be shocked if they did take a small step back just to take a big leap forward here down the road. They're starting to get more and more good prospects into their system. Of course, they drafted Cole Yzerman last year. He's looking really good so far in his development. They picked up Cal Ritchie in the Brock Nelson trade, which is really good. They're picking first overall, which they're expected to take Matthew Schaefer. And there's a lot of belief that they'd really like to figure out landing the hometown talent, the young centerman James Haggins, who, like I said, at one point was thought by many to be the first pick in this draft. And obviously a lot of other players have kind of surpassed him, and he's one of the names that a lot of draft experts think could slide in this draft. Like, some have him down as like 6, 7, 8. Like, it's hard to say. So like the speculation around the Islanders is that they've had a lot of talks with the Bruins and the Flyers. Now the Flyers are picking at number 6, the Bruins are at number 7. It's believed that there's some talks involving Jean-Gabriel Pageau, Alexander Romanov. That could be. Now, neither of those players are going to land them a pick that high, so I don't know what else would all be involved here. Then Elliot Friedman reported just in the past 24 hours or so that he says the Islanders are quietly shopping Noah Dobson because he is 1 year away from being an unrestricted free agent. He's an RFA right now, needs a new deal. The believed asking price from Dobson's camp is starting at $11 million. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to end up signing for that, but that's where they're starting negotiations. So I can see him coming down, maybe closer to 10, but it's going to be 10 plus. I don't think that's really far-fetched at all for what he's accomplished. Now, obviously, this past year wasn't as good as the year before. They need him to be at his best to justify that kind of money, but I think they're basically kind of gauging what the market could look like on a trade versus what the contract's going to look like and making a decision on what they do. A player like Dobson could land them a pick that high. A right shot D that can get you 70-plus points is in his mid-20s and could play with your team for 10 years or more. Yeah, you know what? I could see a pick that high coming back in a trade like that. So it's, again, not a given they do something, and he's only kind of quietly being shopped to determine his market value. But, there could be a bigger splash in here where the Islanders walk away from the draft, like I said, with Schaefer and Haggins. It could be the story of the draft. It's not going to be easy. They're going to have to give up something of value. But if they determine that the Dobson contract's too rich for them, and they're confident that Schaefer can replace what he does in the short term, then maybe they pull the trigger. Now, personally, I think if you're Matthew Darche or even Patrick Wall, the head coach, you'd love to have both Dobson and Schaefer. They shoot different ways too, which is great. You get a lefty and a righty. That could be a phenomenal thing to watch. But obviously everything has to make sense. So keep an eye on the New York Islanders. They're not only picking first, but these talks with the Bruins and the Flyers, that's why the 6 and 7 picks are believed to have, the teams are open to trading them. Like I said, if they can land a top player they like. Now, Pajot was linked more so to the Bruins. I think Romanov, was kind of a combination of Boston and Philadelphia. Both liked him, so I don't know what's going to happen there, but there's lots of conversations that kind of been going on. The Flyers also have picks 22 and 31 besides pick number 6, so they got lots of things that they're kind of working on there. So some of the players at the top of the draft could be very, very much a wild card and could cause teams to make decisions with their picks that we might not see. Like I said, Misa is a player that's been pretty much locked in at 2 for quite some time, but, could that be a wild card if San Jose kind of goes off the boards and surprises everybody, right? And then, like I said, players like Frondel, Desnoyers, even to some extent Brady Martin, they're kind of like wild cards on what teams feel about them. And depending on who's available at what spot is definitely going to trigger some potential activity. Now, Columbus, or Elliot Friedman's latest 32 Thoughts blog, and he talked about it on the pod a little bit as well, but Columbus is a team that's not getting enough attention by the media and NHL insiders for a team that could make big splashes, be busy, etc. They've got multiple first-round picks. They're both believed to be available for trade. We know GM Don Waddell is not afraid to be aggressive. It's believed that he wants to take this team who had a bit of a surprise season. A lot of us thought that Columbus was going to be down and out. The team endured a significant tragedy, losing Johnny Gaudreau and before last season, and they responded to the adversity well. And they had a really big year. They didn't make the playoffs, but they were one of the teams that were in the mix right near the end, and they were not that far off. So, obviously they feel like with a few tweaks, they can be in that conversation again, and they'd like to be more secure in that conversation than they were this year. So, multiple first-rounders could get you some decent, players, or maybe they combine them together to move up to get another top player. Like either way, the Blue Jackets are definitely a team to watch for sure. Like I said, Utah also wants to make a big splash. So some of these teams that might not get a ton of play in the media are going to be interesting for sure. Montreal, who does get a lot of media attention, obviously is going to be interesting as well. They have multiple first rounders as well at pick number 16 and number 17. It's no surprise. In secret, they're looking for a number 2 centerman. And it's going to be tough to do now via free agency. Some of the top players that were expected to be available or have already re-signed, like Brock Nelson, Matt Duchene. So there's not much out there in the free agent market. If they're going to land a player that's really going to help them, it's probably going to have to be via trade. Now, we'll see what they end up doing, but those 2 picks are definitely available for the right player. Or if they can't find a trade involving that number 2 centerman, maybe, like I said, if one of the teams that are higher up in the draft are content to move back and get multiple picks, maybe they package them together and they get one pick that's higher. That's another option. But I think Kent Hughes' first choice will be using those along with a prospect if he has to, because they've got lots of them, to land themselves a really good 2C. But as far as who that target could be, it's not quite really thoroughly clear at this point. So we'll have to see where things go on that front. I know Matt Duchene was a name that came up a lot in Montreal media. He's staying in Dallas. If John Tavares ends up not re-signing in Toronto, he would make sense for the Habs. I mean, he's an older guy. He'd be a placeholder for a couple years, coming off a 38-goal season. Could be a good veteran to have around for those guys. I don't know if there'd be any interest on his part, but there are some options that could be out there. Now, Montreal's also been linked to Claude Giroux. If he does not sign in Ottawa, a belief with Giroux that he would be possibly interested in going to Montreal, but he's not a centerman now. And I know I've seen a lot of Habs fans kind of putting him in as a center on some mock lineups, and like Giroux hasn't played center in at least 5 or 6 years. He's 3 years in Ottawa, had never been a center. In his last few years in Philly, he wasn't a center. Takes a lot of faceoffs, but he's just a winger, and at this point in his career, that's really good on faceoffs. Like, not the quickest guy by any means, but really smart and obviously effective player. But I'm not sure he's not going to solve that number 2C that they're looking for. Now, Buffalo is another team to watch as well. That number 9 pick. They have a lot of players in play. We've heard about JJ Peterka. We've heard about Obviously Bo Byram, they're the main ones. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. To some degree, Alex Tuch, but that's been kind of rebuffed lately. There's a possibility Alex Tuch is willing to stay, so he probably doesn't get moved unless a wicket deal comes along. There's been some whispers about Owen Power, but I don't know that that's really something Buffalo wants to do either. But if they can package a deal with 9 and any of those other players and they get something really high end, again, they could be a very interesting team to watch. We know that the 10 pick with Anaheim, the Ducks have made that pick available for trade as well. They want to get in the playoffs next year. We've already seen them make one move, getting Chris Kreider, and they're bound to do more here. So watch for Anaheim. The Vancouver Canucks, pick 15's already been offered. They tried in a trade to get Marco Rossi from the Minnesota Wild, and it wouldn't be surprising if they continue to work on that. But it was believed that pick 15 and a prospect was offered to the Wild for Rossi, and they declined the trade. Now, Minnesota doesn't want to take a step back. They don't want to get worse. So they are willing to, I believe some people think they're willing at least, to take a trade that gets them some future-based assets like a top pick or a prospect, but they would only do that if they had something else lined up that they could flip it. So basically a 3-team deal where they could get a player somebody else and move that compensation along. They don't want to move Rossi for a draft pick or a prospect and to say, okay, we're done. That's not what they're interested in. He was a fairly big piece for them, but at the same time, they're not agreeing on a contract. And if they can't find a trade that they really like, maybe they do sign him. But at this point, Vancouver is very interested and will probably continue to push in that regard. Obviously, like I said, lots of players available. Now, the Canucks also reportedly interested in Bo Byram out of Buffalo, like I just talked about too. I don't know if pick 15 and something's going to get that. Obviously, that helps their blue line get better, and at the same time, it also gives them some Quinn Hughes insurance, because we all know that there's a risk that Quinn Hughes may leave Vancouver in a year or two, and Byram's not Quinn Hughes. Nobody can really replace him per se, but he is a really good higher-end defenseman that can do some of the same things and, at least doesn't leave your blue line completely as bad as it could be if he's not there. So Byram is a player, and he's from Western Canada, so there is belief that he might be interested. They might work for both sides. So we'll see. Nashville, another team to watch. They have picks 5, 23, and 26. We know that they're a team looking for immediate help after last year's free agency. Spending didn't work out, so clearly that's a team that's looking to rebound here quickly. I don't know. There's some speculation they could move Marchessault or Stamkos, but I mean, they both have a lot of say where they go as well. Some people thought that Stamkos might be a player to go back to Toronto, especially if Tavares doesn't end up re-signing. But again, that's probably not as easy as said than done. I mean, it could get Nashville out of a contract, but yeah, I mean, that's more, I think, just fun to think about. Probably not going to be something that we see happen. Isaac Howard, another name, a former first rounder who has had the relationship go sour with his team, the Tampa Bay Lightning, expected to be traded. Most likely, I wouldn't be shocked to see him move for a mid to late first round pick or another prospect. That's something that's likely going to happen in or around this event as well. Obviously, some other players to watch. K'Andre Miller, tons of interest in that player from the New York Rangers, so he's very much expected to likely get moved. Lucas Reichel is another name to watch as well. He could be a target for the Edmonton Oilers. The Blackhawks, I don't think are completely sold on Reichel. They've got a lot of good young forwards coming into the organization that are hopefully going to take a bigger role this year. And I know there's some talk. Stan Bowman obviously was still with the Blackhawks when he was drafted. He's a player that would know Leon Draisaitl. Just because they're both from Germany doesn't mean he's going to end up in Edmonton, but it could be a player that Leon knows, and maybe they could see if there's if it makes sense. They need to get younger. Bowman made comments about this when they spoke to the media the other day. The Oilers need to inject some more youth, and it just might be a guy they could get for cheap that they know. Like Leon would probably know him a little bit. Stan knows him a little bit, and maybe it's the fresh start he needs to play with some higher end players. It's just an option. Other names to keep an eye on as well. would be some of the veteran talent that's expected to be moved that could involve draft picks like Rasmus Andersson. The Penguins got a ton of guys for sale. They're likely trying to move Rickard Rakell, Erik Karlsson, and Brian Rust. Interesting names there to watch for sure. Thatcher Demko out of Vancouver could be interesting. Not a given that he gets traded, but it's certainly possible. Same with John Gibson out of Anaheim, some goalies that could find themselves on the move. The Avalanche are a team that doesn't have to make a move, but it's expected they might want to make some upgrades, and if they do, a guy like Sam Girard might end up being sacrificed for cap purposes. So another player to watch, still fairly not super young, but young enough. A good puck mover, smaller defenseman, but been very effective in his career. We don't know what Dallas is doing with Jason Robertson yet. I believe they're going to talk about an extension to get an idea how things look on that front before they decide. We've already seen Dallas trade Mason Marchment. It's believed they're going to either trade or buy out Matt Dumba. That'll create some more cap space, and then ultimately, I thought Lyubushkin might be on the move as well. There's some saying that Lyubushkin's expected to stay, which I find a little surprising. But with that being said, Robertson's the key guy there in Dallas. That's kind of had a lot of speculation around him and could be very, very interesting. A higher-end player doesn't often get the trade market, so we'll see. But I don't know if they're really in a big rush. They like some of these other teams, like I said, they don't want to get worse. So if they're going to trade Robertson, they're going to want a big return to balance out that lineup. So it's going to be tough to see how things go, but definitely a name to kind of keep an eye on. There's a lot of teams here that are expected to be active, and, well, here we are. So that gets us all the latest talk around here for about a week out. There's bound to be more. There's some of these draft picks might even end up being swapped places or moved prior to the draft, but a lot of it likely takes place Friday night while things are ongoing, because a lot of these draft pick swaps and trades that you keep hearing rumors about, a lot of it's going to boil down to who's available to pick with that. Like if the team's picking 5th overall, well, they're going to want to see how those first 4 picks go. And then they'll be like, okay, the guy we really like is there. We're keeping it. We're taking him. Then no trade happens, right? So a lot of that comes into play. And, sometimes you hear like, oh, well, all these rumors never come true. Right, because a lot of it is contingent on who's available for the draft pick. And that's just a big thing. That's a wild card that you can't always predict, which is why a lot of these trades happen last minute. You get Gary Bettman coming out saying, we have a trade to announce. This pick is now being moved with whatever. And you hear this, oh my God, that's surprising, right? So that's why it makes the draft kind of fun, because you usually get some good activity that makes things very interesting. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's latest draft rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.